Hi there. So in this video, I want to speak about plant medicine, indigenous people, and money, and specifically about how there can easily be misunderstandings and challenges and conflicts that arise in this kind of dynamic where Westerners and indigenous people meet and there is interaction and exchange with money. I've been engaging and working together with Indigenous people in the plant medicine spaces since 2016. I've traveled to the Brazilian and Peruvian Amazon several times, and since 2023, I've been married to an Indigenous man from the Hunikuin tribe from the area of Jordão in Acre, Brazil. So I'm speaking from my own experience and what I've kind of encountered, the challenges, the tensions that I've experienced. And I want to share a bit about what I've understood to maybe offer some support for anyone else who might be navigating in these spaces and maybe uh, meeting these kind of challenges. So, first of all, I want to mention that money is it's a neutral thing, but we have a lot of stories and emotions attached to money. So the way we view, understand, relate, and engage and work with money is very much influenced on our kind of experiences in life around money, whether it is how we've witnessed other people using money or not using it, or how we've witnessed people close to us speaking about money or speaking about people who have money or don't have money. And then also like these collective cultural uh, narratives and rules. And all of these affect how we meet money, how we relate with money, how we carry money, how we share money. And the system where many of us Westerners come from is very different from the system where our indigenous friends come from. So I personally am Finnish. I'm from Finland. My parents are Finnish. I grew up as a child of diplomats, living around the world in many countries, in many cases also developing countries, where I was came face to face with poverty and social inequality. And my mother was born and grew up during the war, lost her father due to the war, and there was a lot of poverty and lack and challenges with having basic needs met. My father's family is a bit more wealthy, comes from a family of more upper class, perhaps privileged people. And this has created in me a big inner tension and conflict around how to work with and handle money. On the one hand, my father has been very like, generous and open and not so restricted with money. And my mother has been very like yeah, mindful and careful of how she spends money. And there's been a lot of guilt and shame narratives connected with her money story. So a lot of judgment towards people who have money, a lot of judgment towards people who don't have money, and yeah, a lot of like victimhood stories attached to money. And also the fact that Finland, which is where my ancestral lineage comes from, is a place where the seasons of nature are very distinct and very polarized, shall we say. There's the summer, which is lots of light and very vibrant, very short growing season, and then there's a really long, dark winter. And so we've really had to. One of the survival mechanisms of my family lineage has been to work really hard and then save what you have and to be really mindful of how you like if you use your resources. We're very like, yeah, good at saving. And then we have like my husband's family. So my husband Ruainu uh, tells the story of when he was young and would spend the days fishing. That when he'd come back from fishing, that on the way back they'd just like kill a capybara there to have some food to bring to the family. So food was very abundant, and in the Hunikuin tradition, they believe that, or they understand that nature is offering these resources. The food is there to be taken, and that nature is offering it to them. And over the years, as the indigenous communities have also grown, the population, with the increased longevity, access to medical care, it has resulted in the population growing. They enjoy eating abundantly and they enjoy sharing. So meat, which is a really valuable resource for them, has been becoming more and more scarce, partly because they relate to nature as being super abundant, which it is, but nature is also cyclical. There are periods of scarcity as well. This is just a little bit of background to set the stage in like how our perceptions, perhaps, we come from different backgrounds. One where there's a need to like save and be really mindful of spending, and the other where there's just been a lot of abundance and it's been okay to like use and share. So as I mentioned earlier about this kind of the stories and narratives and beliefs that we have attached to money, being connected to kind of maybe broader attitudes and beliefs about abundance and resources, we project these assumptions and these narratives and stories on those around us. So, for example, I've noticed in my relationship with my husband and his family, where they only got access to money a few decades ago. My husband, I think, was around 14, 15, 16 when he saw money for the first time. And his parents also didn't have much access or experience with money. There's been no like education about how to use money or how to work with money. And it's been treated just like any other resource, kind of like fruit that grows on trees. And funny enough, like I discovered that they had this belief that if you have a bank card, that then you just go to the ATM and you take out money. So the way that you get money is by having a bank card. There was no like idea or concept that you need to work to get the money into the bank account. So the exciting part was getting the bank card, and because then it would open the money tap. So sharing with him and his family this information that actually doesn't work that way has been really like eye-opening for them. I think it's good, like especially for those who are maybe considering traveling to the jungle or maybe already interacting with these indigenous people, to understand that one, they can have this assumption and belief all people that are not indigenous from the forest, anyone who looks like they have a lot of nice material things, that they must be millionaires, that they have access to infinite money via bank accounts. They also, because money is so new, uh, and money is just a thing, they don't really have a sense of like how to attribute value to different things with money. Just like in our Western world as well. I mean, money is a very made up thing, and it's a very social construction to define like how much something is worth. Like just think about like how prices have changed and increased. Um, or how much like one pair of jeans can cost, 20 euros if it's got one brand name on it, and maybe the same jeans, if it has another brand name on it, it could be like 500 euros. So, it's the same like when interacting with indigenous people and talking about prices, they, they're just kind of like guessing, putting like some price on whatever item it is that they are. So they're just kind of inventing numbers, maybe checking out what other people are charging. They might be thinking about what they need in order to get money so that they can buy the supplies that they need to take care of themselves, their families. There often isn't this kind of correlation between how much energy went into making or producing or accessing the things that were necessary to create. Because of the kind of like historical colonial past, many of these indigenous people have lived in. For example, their initial exposure to money has been possibly through those who worked on rubber tapping plantations. So they would work for a month or whatever they would work for, and then they'd get a bunch of rubber and they'd go to the shop and they'd exchange it for supplies, ammunition, salt, uh, knives, cooking pots, hammocks, clothes. And oftentimes they would get the stuff without actually seeing the money. The money would just like stay with the merchant there, the plantation owner. And sometimes if they did get a bit of money, then they would use it on whatever extra that they felt like they needed. Nowadays, the money that Indigenous people mainly have access to come through government offered social benefits, like family money, it's called. And usually that might be the only source of income for some families. And also, some families might get money from a family member working as a teacher in the community or maybe a healthcare agent. And there might be a couple of political representation positions where someone gets access to money. But otherwise, it's everything happens through bartering and exchange. And in these indigenous systems and frameworks, the community depends on everyone participating in the community work. They have a cultural system that's been set up naturally to make survival in the forest possible. Everyone has to show up to work. There are specific roles, like for women and for men, and each of these roles is highly valued and appreciated. And then within these different roles, people also take pride in their ability to do things better or be more generous. And social cohesion happens through like being in service, through gifting to each other. So I give to you so that you can help me when I need help. And it's not like immediate, it might be, you help someone now and then it gets reciprocated 3 or 4 or 5 years or even more later when there is a moment of need. So money is very like fluid, it moves, and they don't have this system of like saving because there's always someone who needs something now, right? And in order to keep the community healthy, the family healthy, they help each other out when the other person is in need, when someone is in need. So what I've noticed has happened, sometimes I've provided money for a certain specific, for example, development project to help build a house or a fish farm, and then sent a bunch of money, and then there have been some reasons why the project hasn't gone going. Usually, the tractor was not available, or some expert was not available for the work, and then that money just gets spent on other things because there was someone who needed it for school fees or school uniform, or someone needed medical expenses covered, and there was need for food, or there was someone's birthday and they need to organize a party. Birthdays are considered really important. It's like when you have a party and you make an offering uh, by feeding your community, you are praying and getting force to be able to continue moving onwards for your next year. So money is spent, it goes and it flows, and it's a reciprocal affair. And that I've like for me, coming from this Finnish kind of background where I work, save, almost like to the point of sacrifice. I feel uncomfortable spending on myself. It can be really like, it has been really like frustrating and like I've almost been like deeply offended when, I've saved money and given it for a certain purpose, and then it wasn't spent on that purpose. Instead of buying, for example, my husband, who I know, like before we were together, he was desperate to take his son to one of the cities to meet a specialized doctor because of a health issue, and I gave money in exchange for something, a vest, to help him get the plane tickets for him as his son to travel. And then a few days later, I met him, all new clothes for him and his son, and trying to make some exchange to buy something else so that he could get money to buy the same plane tickets that I had bought or that I had already paid money for. And I was really upset, and I told him off that, that money was for plane tickets, not for buying clothes. And that's something that repeatedly continues to happen. That I give money for one purpose and then it ends up being spent on something else. And that's something where I'm learning to develop boundaries and to get really clear on getting real clear exchange for what it is that I need from my husband and his family and his tradition, so that I can feel like, yeah, kind of like that I'm not like over giving and my resources are not being spent on something that I didn't want it to be spent on, because we like to spend money when it's aligned with our values. And it also reminds me of, I've had this conflict inside me that I've been a vegetarian since I was a child. Well, since I'm now with Ruaino, I'm practicing eating fish a little bit more, but I've had this, and I have all these like narratives and stories about, you know, I have this environmental protection background, like how meat is not good to eat for environmental purposes. The Amazon is being like cut down for soya plantations that are feeding all the industrial animal production systems. Uh, there's also Amazon is being cut down for having these big ranches, cattle ranches. And then so there's a part of me that really wants to save the Amazon and protect the forest. And then I see when I send money to my husband and his family, they spend it on meat and chicken, which is actually the cause of destruction of the Amazon. And it can, I've had these moments where like go into this like real resistance and spiral about like how can I, uh, pass on my money to something that perpetuates activities that I don't align with. And I really had to meeting my money stories, my narratives, and to learn how to focus on what is my responsibility, what can I influence, what can I not influence. And the reality is that the way that they live there in the forest, they don't have access to all the things that we have access to here. They are dealing with the choices that they have. Maybe they don't have access to the most ecological laundry detergent, and therefore they use the the not so nice industrial perfumed detergent that contaminates the waters and all of that. So we live in a world that is very polarized, is very like, full of contrasts. And the reality is that as a single unique individual, we cannot like control everything. We cannot be responsible for how other people use money. And that's something that was really causing resistance and conflict for me and my relationship with my husband and his family around money. And what I've learned and been practicing has been learning to like mind my own business, to to identify the ways in which I am also getting back from them, because they have limited amount of access to money and material resources. They only have, what is there in the forest. They have their spiritual knowledge. They have there's a lot of material stuff that they have that is of great value. And but it's but like for us in the Western world who are used to money being this kind of transactional thing where we can like see a measured result or get like a physical concrete thing in exchange for the money that we give, relating and exchanging with these indigenous people can be sometimes a bit, subtle and confusing. And especially when we don't know when we don't know what it is that we want, uh, and when we don't know how to receive. I'm just reminded of an example where someone I know had, helped out a friend who's an Indigenous person to cover some travel related costs. And the intention was that she would get paid back when this travel was going to happen. This friend was going to travel to Europe, do a bunch of retreats and ceremonies here, and earn money and then pay back this other person. And in the end, a bunch of things happened. The trip never happened. This guy who had asked for the money to cover expenses uh, does not have access to money. He's not able to pay back. And he is also, what he has to offer is maybe, some handicraft, some jewelry, maybe some teachings. But the person who lent the money doesn't actually resonate with using the jewelry. She only used it like when she was in the forest, but not anymore. Maybe is not open or able to receive the lessons and the teachings that this Honey Queen family is able to offer because she has other needs and she wants this money to help her meet these other needs. So in these kinds of situations, it can be really frustrating. And for me, I've had these situations where I've sent a bunch of money for something and I don't see the money being used for what it was meant to be used. There have been cases where, like the money that's gone in there has literally burnt up in flames, like 1,000 liters of gasoline burning the whole house. Or there's my friend who gathered a bunch of funds to buy food for the dogs, and then because the dogs in the village are often very skinny, and she felt sorry for the dogs. And there's a real reason why they don't feed the dogs, because if they feed the dogs too much, they get lazy and they don't want to hunt. So anyway, what happened was, like, so there was the dog food was bought and it was indiscriminately shared with all the animals really abundantly, because the indigenous people, when there is abundance, they take advantage of it. They, it's like when there's abundance, you use it and you strengthen yourself, and so that you're prepared for the times of lack and struggle and scarcity. So all the dogs and cats were getting fat, and then I was thinking, like, she bought like a whole year's worth of food, and they're not gonna, that food is not gonna last a whole year. And lo and behold, like a few weeks later, there was a flood, and all the food was destroyed by the flood waters, and all that effort that went into trying to help and fix someone, in this case the dogs of the village, it was just Yushibu, Great Spirit, nature just took it away. And for me, there's many ways that we can relate to these kind of situations and experiences, many ways that we can explain them away. Uh, for me personally, the only way that I'm noticing that I can kind of navigate through those is to try to focus on what is the teaching, the lesson there for me. And one of my lessons that I've learned from the Indigenous people, from the Huni Queen, is that they don't give unless someone asks. And also, when someone asks, they don't necessarily always give. They give if they have something to give, and they give if it's a relationship that supports them, where there's reciprocity. And so for me, one of my lessons has been about really starting to practice, you know, getting okay and comfortable with seeing and witnessing the struggle and the suffering of some people, without like jumping into this impulse of like, oh, I need to save them, I need to fix all their problems, I need to like arrange something so that they'll be okay. Because they live in an environment which is nature is really harsh. There's times of the year when there's really strong drought, then there's a time of flooding when everything might get destroyed. But the way that the Honey Queen people live in relationship with nature, they understand that it's part of the process of give and take. Yushibu, the spirit realms, they want their share as well. It's like, if if some food falls on the floor, I grew up thinking, oh, you have to pick it up. There's like I've heard some people speak about the 3 second rule. Like, if the food is on the floor, if it's been there less than 3 seconds, it's okay to eat it. So like just take it and save it. And we have some of us grew up being told that, you need to finish all the food that's on your plate because there's some hungry children in Africa that are starving, and so eat, be grateful. But like what I've learned with my husband is that actually, if something falls away, it's yoshibu, it's spirit that's taking it. It's some energy, some spirit that wants its share. So maybe, like if I drop some food on the floor while I'm cooking, or while I'm walking around, maybe it's not something to get all ashamed about, to blame oneself about, to start getting all greedy and like, save everything for myself, but rather than, oh, okay, this is for Yushibu, this is for spirit. And like they also, for example, have this thing in the evening that they leave all the plates and the pots and everything spread out. And instead of like saving the food for, they might save some food for tomorrow, some of the more precious food, but it's like nighttime is the feast time for all the insects and spirits, all the energies of nature that also need to be fed. And it's an intentional sharing. I used to think that they're just like totally messy and disorganized and don't know how to take care of their things. And that's why, they have all this sickness and everything. But there's, it's like totally a different framework, a way of relating and being part of a bigger system. So it's, I come from a system where there's a lot of focus on hoarding and taking care of the limited amounts that we have, and they come from a system where everything is abundant and shared. Now our world is changing. uh, many of the places where indigenous people live, certain resources are becoming more scarce, collectively at the global level as well. And but it doesn't mean, like, part of the problem, I understand it, is because we have this in the West, partly because of our scarcity thing. um, we kind of compensated by like over consuming, maybe consuming things that we don't want and what we don't need. And in that process, we've like kind of ended up in the situation where, yeah, there's a bit of like overspending on unnecessary things. And so I think my understanding is that on both sides here, there's not one way that is perfect. There's not a right or a wrong way, but the trick is to find the middle way, to learn how to, for example, my husband's family, to learn how to, if money is a scarce resource or if meat is a scarce resource, how do we work with those things that maybe are not as easily available? How do we take care of them? How do we tend to them? How do we make them, kind of like uh, planting seeds in a garden? We have to water the garden. We have to feed the plants or the animals so that they can then nourish us and take care of us and offer us what we need and what we want. So these are lessons that I've personally been receiving from my interactions with the Hunikuin people. So I spoke earlier about how these indigenous people might have assumptions that us Westerners have an infinite access to money. So we also have a bunch of projections on indigenous people. And some of these assumptions might be that we expect that they live there in the forest, that they don't need anything because the forest provides everything, and we want them to stay in this kind of pure state of not getting involved in technology, don't get any TVs, don't have mobile phones, washing machines, fridges, that's not necessary. But considering, like, if you go there and you see the conditions and the challenges and the struggles that they deal with, it's absolutely so understandable that they also want money to be able to have a fridge, to have a stove, to cook food, uh, to be able to spend money on clothes. Because a lot of the stuff that is available there, the pots and the pans are really poor quality, they break all the time. Uh, so they need money to buy more pots. Uh, the the environment is really harsh. The sun damages the clothes. Uh, Clothes wear out really fast. Termites, insects break clothes, eat the houses. So they really need money for lots of things that they use today. And we in the West can easily, if we're not aware of the realities of what it is to live somewhere in a very isolated, secluded place where it takes maybe a week for material things to arrive, including gasoline, which they use to move by boats, and also to build their houses or to create their plantations. I mean, who wouldn't want to use a chainsaw that can facilitate work immensely compared to by hand using machete, to cut down these huge trees? So that can also lead to, us Westerners, when we go there, to kind of feel like, oh my goodness, why do they just want money all the time? Everything is about money. And so there's an example from when I went on an expedition, where we visited various villages, and I spent about 2,000 euros on the expedition. Uh, that was to cover the transport, the accommodation, and the food. And then once the whole thing was happening in one of the communities, there was a request that we visitors pay extra for the person who was housing the people. And that was like shocking for most people. And I told the person who asked that no, that we've all paid a lot of money to be able to participate in this, and it's all included, so we're not going to pay anything else. If you have an issue, you need to talk with the organizer. And the reality is that there are so many expenses that go into organizing these expeditions. Not only the expenses that happen like during the time when people go there, but like, to maybe fix the boats, fix the houses, build toilets, clear the grounds, so that they are open and inviting, and to keep the snakes away, and yeah, and to get the electricity working, have the water pump working, and to have enough boats with enough gasoline and enough people to navigate the boats to transport you. So, and also food to feed the group, and then the families that are supporting the work, because they also want something in exchange. And ideally, there should also be some money left to invest in some projects that help to ease the life of the community. And so, what feels like a lot of money to one person can actually, in the end, not be enough for everything. And and I understand also that, for the person who comes from, for example, Europe to the Amazon or the States, we can spend thousands of euros or dollars just for the travel expenses to get there. And then there's the expenses locally. And then there's probably not so much money left to buy all the extra things that we would like to buy. And there's a lot of like money stuff showing up there. And one thing that I've noticed that, well, I've had someone also commenting to me that, these indigenous people, they just want our money, that we're kind of like banks, and that some people decide that. So this one person said that, whenever I'm in Brazil, everyone's just always asking for money, and that's why I don't go there anymore, and that's why other people don't want to go there either. And I totally get that. It feels super uncomfortable for many of us when people ask us for money, especially if we have a hard time saying no. I've really been, during this past year, while I've been consciously working on healing my relationship with money, I've been really having to hold space for myself when I've been practicing saying no to my husband when he asks for money to help his family. Sometimes even when they're like in kind of like an emergency situation. And sometimes it can be really hard to, see the reality of things and to realize that, I can't be responsible for like helping everyone, and I have to say no. And it can bring up these big sense these feelings of fear of being attacked or abandoned, or like, yeah, I've had like fears that, like, even that the whole community or that the whole community will just start sending a lot of judging thoughts towards me, and and yeah, it's not easy to navigate these changes, but I understand that, that that discomfort around money and saying no is not the problem. Is not that they're asking. The problem is our maybe inability to say no. Or maybe, we might want to help, but we don't want to give for free. And maybe we need to discover, like, what is that thing that I need to get in exchange so that I can feel okay with giving. Because sometimes we're not, for example, for a long time, I bought like a bunch of jewelry and stuff, and then I've had a really hard time, passing them on, selling them on. And it's only recent, in the beginning, I was thinking like, oh, people can buy prettier ones made by others that, these are so expensive. But the reality is that it costs like a ton of, it's really difficult to get these beads in Brazil. There are only specific shops in some big cities where they sell the good quality beads, and to get them to the jungle, it's several weeks of postal travel. Sometimes the packages don't arrive, sometimes they arrive, and then, uh, they a lot of beadwork goes into creating these pieces, a lot of time and energy. So but there's only so many pieces of beadwork that I can buy, as well. And so I've had to explore other ways of like, how can I feel like I'm getting exchange for what I'm giving? Maybe, teachings, maybe prayers. That's something that I've been asking for, is like, prayers. And but what I've also like really discovered that there's, it's kind of like, I, I use this as an example, like sometimes when I talk about Westerners struggling to receive the healing, the teachings of the medicine. It's like if you give a mobile phone to an indigenous person who barely knows how to read and write, uh, they know how to use it based on the images that they see, and some steps that they've learned. They don't necessarily stop to read what it says. They just kind of like, okay, that's how it works, and kind of automated way. They might play games or watch videos, send messages to each other by voice. And so it's the same, like if you give a mobile phone to someone who doesn't know how to use it, the way they can use it is very limited. And then same thing applies for us in the Western world. So, these indigenous people they share their medicine, they share their prayers, they share their stories, they share their energy, their presence. But unless, and all of that has great value, but if we don't know how to understand those stories, if we don't know how to work with the medicine, if we don't know how to receive, uh, then we are not like, everything that comes with what these indigenous people have to offer us is so much more than what we're able to recognize. And if we're not able to recognize and value it, we can't receive it either. So it's a process of learning also to value. And and for me, I understand that that is one of the things that is of great value that I'm learning from my husband and his people, is learning how to relate, how to be in relationship with the spirit dimensions, with nature, with family, with life, with the Great Spirit, to know our place in this bigger system. And that's, I feel, is something that we are needing to integrate and bring into our lives here in the West, especially when we work with money and deal with money. because at the moment it's very like, money is abstract. We want more, and we save it, and then we spend it on a bunch of things that we think will make us feel better, but it's not making us feel better. Then we go look for something else to make us feel better. And whereas actually, what if the issue is not that we don't have enough money, or that and that we need more stuff, but that we need to learn how to um, relate to and interact and engage and receive from the things that we participate in, that we give the money and then that we're able to receive. And then we don't need as much money. We don't need to have so many millionaires in the world. Uh, our future will also be more secure. We'll feel safer if we have a community that we are, that is supporting us, that is holding us, that will step in when we are in a time of need. So all of these aspects are things that I think are very valuable and important to take into account and remember when we step into relating and engaging with the Indigenous people. Another very simple example about money that I want to share is, and it relates to the story about, feeling like disturbed how people are constantly asking for money, is that as I've seen in my Honey Queen family, children are, taken care of. There's always someone taking care of the children. Children grow up learning that they are valuable, that they're loved, that they're cared for. There's also the way that I've witnessed that people grow and learn, is that everyone is allowed to learn and to grow on their own way, through their own experiences, through mistakes. There's very little of this kind of like trying to control each other and telling the other person how something needs to be done. And there's like freedom for people to practice asking for what they want and what they need, also to be allowed to do what they want when they want. So, for example, if someone asks for something, usually people give them what they want, because you want the person to like you. You're nurturing a relationship. So the things that we in Western, maybe healing circles, where we talk about people pleasing being like unhealthy behavior pattern that sucks our energy. When reframed into this kind of system or context where there's a healthy social cohesion, actually giving and sharing is strengthening. It creates more exchange and reciprocity. So I've noticed, for example, like in my upbringing, I learned to be very careful about asking, because oftentimes when I would ask for something, there might be a response that, or you don't, that's not okay, you can't have that, or it's inconvenient, what I want is inconvenient, or yeah. So there's been this kind of, I've learned at some point on my journey that it's not a good thing to ask, and I need to be grateful for what I'm offered. And in the Indigenous context, I've noticed that they ask without any shame or guilt, and it's totally fine to say no. And also, like, if you there's no like expectation like to offer. So, for example, a lot of I've noticed when, us Westerners, especially when we visit the communities in the jungle, we might feel like, no one's taking care of us, they're just like leaving us on our own, and why is there not this and that, and you know yeah, the things could be better. And at least where in my kind of upbringing and the system that I live in, there's a lot of this like, oh, we want to make sure everything is good, keep the customer happy, and be prepared and for any unforeseen consequence, and make sure everything is perfect. And but in the Indigenous context, they don't do it that way. They respond when people ask. So they don't bother to waste energy on things that maybe no one's going to appreciate or that is not needed. So maybe that's something that we in the West, we sometimes like overconsume, we overdo things, we overgive, and even sometimes, offering things that the others don't want. And one of these things is like advice, unsolicited advice. That can be something where those of us who have had maybe or have a tendency to give advice, um, or who care and want to help others by sharing advice or perspectives, uh, we might actually, if someone doesn't want it, they're not going to be open to receive it. So it's good to be very mindful of what it is you want, what it is you need, and to practice having the courage to really explicitly and concretely express what it is that you need and want. And also to be aware of what, like everyone has different resources and capacities to be able to give certain things. So I've noticed the Honey Queen, they're very generous about giving, sharing their knowledge, their presence, their music, their smile, their, even just like coming and being with you in ceremony, maybe when you're having a hard time. That's giving. That's a really important and valuable resource. But some of us might feel like that doesn't count, you know. So related to this giving and receiving, because I my sense is that many of these indigenous people, they have a sense of worthiness, so that they deserve what they ask for. Um, then they also, like, I've discovered that at least in the Hunikun language, they don't have a word for thank you. They also don't have a word for sorry. So what can happen is sometimes, like, when you're doing a transaction with someone, you're buying their jewelry or something, you give them the money, and they just, like, they grab it, they snatch it, and then they kind of like run off and don't say anything. And for some of us who have been taught that it's really important to be very polite, very grateful, express your gratitude with overflow, it might be very like offensive, like, that the money that you spent so much effort getting together, someone just like grabbed it and took it and went away. So just sharing that that's not, something that is personally, sometimes they might be really grateful and enthusiastic and really happy that they got it, and so they grab it and they hide it so that no one is going to see or take it away or steal it from them. So just because someone doesn't say thank you, it doesn't mean that they're being disrespectful or taking advantage of you. So, working with Indigenous people, it can be challenging at times, but it's also a great opportunity for our personal development, our spiritual development, and there are many beautiful, magical things that we can experience together with Indigenous people. For me personally, I've often felt them like when there's music, when there's ceremony, working with the medicines, listening to their stories, just hanging out with them sometimes, just feeling their grounded presence, their joy, their happiness, their ease, even though they live in difficult conditions and have limited access to certain resources, there's still this like sense of like trust and generosity and sharing. And these are things that I feel are really beautiful ways for us, Westerners who come from other contexts and worldviews, to come and come into these spaces to learn. And it's very normal that when different kind of worldviews meet, that it can kind of rock the boat a little bit. The stories, the narratives, the beliefs that we've inherited, that we've learned to defend, these stories that have protected us in the systems that we've lived, when they come and they're kind of like dislodged, and we're like put in a situation where we have to question them, or where other approaches or ways of doing show up, it's easy for us to in that space of threat, to either judge and shame or attack, criticize the other side of the story, the other perspective, the other player. And that when we do that, it's kind of like we're externalizing, we're projecting our own story and narrative onto the other person. But if we can be open to learning and evolving and growing together. Neither story is 100% right or wrong or good or bad, but maybe if we can learn to meet each other in these spaces where our differences come face to face, where we meet them, if we can learn to resource ourselves so that we can support ourselves through the process of maybe discerning and becoming aware and familiar of what patterns and thoughts and stories support us and which ones don't, maybe we can also then find the ways in which we can support ourselves to navigate through that whole process of transformation, because transformation doesn't come from just becoming aware of the insight. It's about bringing that, kind of weaving it into our everyday reality and our life and our work and our relationships. So, but that transformation happens over time. It takes practice. It takes consistently showing up and putting into practice these new approaches, these new attitudes about sharing, about generosity, which can be really difficult for those of us who are now living in a time in a space where there's a lot of constriction around abundance and money, and everyone wanting to maximize their profits to save, and and yeah, all these financial systems that are yeah, not don't feel very stable and sustainable. So this journey of transforming our relationship to money, to each other, to our life force energy, our creative energy, because it's all linked to money. It's our creative life force energy that creates the offerings that help us receive money, and it's through money that we're able to invest in the things that help us create our work and to be able to share with others from a space of overflow. So there's a lot of conditioning and story around money that we need to work through if we want to step into this kind of way of living where money can flow through us abundantly, freely, where we can receive and where we can share and support each other and encourage each one of us to participate in this game of reciprocity, so that we're not kind of subsidizing someone else's process or someone else's responsibility. We all have to show up, carry our responsibility for our share of this, of supporting our relationships. So the question is, what is it that we have to share? What is the value that we have to give? And how can we receive money for our offering so that we can then help also the others? And how can we befriend money? How can we befriend our relationships? What if it's not all toxic? What if the toxicity is the stories and the narratives and our way of relating to it all? So I personally have started really intentionally starting to focus on money and my relationship with money about a year ago, when I was in a really difficult, catastrophic situation financially. I'm feeling totally overwhelmed by all the needs of my husband and his family, and all the needs of the people in the world who want access to plant medicine, and yeah, just I was just leaking everywhere, giving and over giving, and totally not taking good enough care of myself, or not aware of the numbers and what I need. So I started studying money. I've been part of a 1 year program called Relax Money. That's been helping me to from the nervous system level to learn how to reassure and support myself, resource myself, so that I'm able to navigate, to meet the difficult beliefs and the stories around money that I carry, to practice finding ways to rewrite these stories, and also to support my body, because these stories are in the body. So we need to actually meet, you know, in order to make the change, we need to actually go there and clean out the closets, do the messy work, the difficult stuff that we don't want to do, look in the places where we'd rather not see certain truths, and that is only possible when we are kind of in a community that feels safe, that supports us, when we're able to resource ourselves. And so I want to share this opportunity with you as well, if it's something that speaks to you, if money is something that is causing friction and challenge in your life. You know, my teacher, my mentor, Kate Northrup, she offers a lot of beautiful, valuable resources online. They're especially focused on women, but you know, it's not only for women. Um, so I'll share in the description section below this video a link to her resources so that you can get familiar with what her way of working is. She's also offering a free workshop called Good with Money, which I joined last year and was like, when I joined that, I felt like, oh my God, there's hope. I can figure this out. And I did join her course then, the whole year program, and it's truly been life changing. It's like really, helped me reprioritize, look at the difficult stuff, take responsibility for what is my responsibility. It's helped me create better relationship with my husband, feel safer with my husband and his family. They're no longer kind of like this big hungry hungry ghost that I need to be responsible of feeding. And it's helping me like to step into this space where I can like speak about money. I didn't used to feel okay speaking about money. I used to be terrified of not being understood, or offending someone when I talk about my perspectives of money. And yeah, it feels really important to share this, because the future of our world, the well-being of ourselves, our families, our communities depends on us being able to relate to money also with greater clarity, with confidence, with safety, with trust. Because without that sense of like trust, we're going to just be in this fight or flight kind of fear driven mode, which is kind of like the cause of why we're over consuming and this planet is in the state that it is. So for me, money is a spiritual teacher. It's one of the ways in which we're going to find our way back home into our own truth, our alignment, our integrity, our value, our worth, so that we can show up and do and be what we need to be to contribute to this world. So if this at all speaks to you, check out the information below, and look forward to continue speaking about these subjects. If you have any thoughts, insights that you want to share, feel free to use the comment section below. And yeah, let's learn how to befriend money. So there was quite a lot here in this video, uh, many stories, many perspectives. Um, I know some of them might be a bit challenging to receive, to take in. That's okay. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't. And I hope that there was something there that supports you in your journey, and your relationship with money, with yourself, with Indigenous people and the medicines, if that's part of your path. And yeah, thanks for listening, and catch you later.